So I met Marc Gafni in 2004. I was a rabbinical student at a Modern Orthodox rabbinical school in New York City, and some people had told me that I should meet this individual, that we had similarities in our teaching styles and in where we drew from the sources that we found that we were alive in, both in Judaism and in other places. And so I was a bit skeptical because I had already seen Marc teaching on public television, and there was something about him even then that I found slightly off-putting. I couldn't put my finger on it, but nonetheless, I was in rabbinical school, and I was also struggling with being Orthodox. I had already been ultra-Orthodox and spent about 10 years as a itinerant Eastern meditator and yoga instructor and doing Pilates and gyrotonic and all these different mind-body things. And I'd made my way back to modern Orthodoxy thinking that that was the place that I would live. And I was struggling. And so, someone said that it would be a good idea to go and hear this guy teach. I went up to Elat Chayyim, this retreat center in upstate New York. And I went with a friend of mine, I would say his name was an Israeli teacher who was at the rabbinical school with me. And we both went to hear him. And essentially, my experience in that first meeting was basically how it would be for the rest of the time that I knew him, which was he said things that were very interesting, and he also said them in a way that was very discomforting and problematic. There was something about him that just didn't ring true to me. I felt that I wasn't sure that he was a real practitioner. I felt that he had a lot of very abstract knowledge of things, but not really on the inside. And that he also seemed to be appropriating teachings that were not his own as his own, quoting people. And so I actually confronted him. The first time that I met him, I confronted him. And this would become a pattern over the course of the 2 years that I actually knew him. Is that I confronted him, and that was a mistake in a way because he took my criticism, and he somehow had a way of pushing a button in me, a button I think that wanted to be recognized. I was in my 30s. I'd spent many, many years both in Judaism and outside as someone who was really seeking, and he pushed a button. He found a way to invite me into a place of being a teacher, being a leader, which was a way of covering over the things that I found very problematic, which he didn't respond to. Eventually, I became a part of his circle when he invited me to become a part of this Maggid training. Told me that I would be the Shoel Meshiv, which was essentially someone who would walk around in the study area and answer any questions, any queries that people might have. I compiled source books for this Maggid training. And I was also invited by him to become a part of a rabbinical training program that was made up of a number of different people in America, in Canada, in Israel that were part of this rabbinical certification program that he was promising. And it worked well for me because I wanted to leave the Modern Orthodox seminary that I was in. Little did I know that he was essentially playing with me, meaning that he had an agenda, which was to have an Orthodox rabbinical student like myself as a part of his group, which was great for him and great for his great cachet. And at the same time, it was great because he wanted to actually start giving smicha and giving certification in America, which he had promised and sworn that he wouldn't do. And I became a pawn in that game for him. I really got a taste of him, of what he was like when I went to Israel in 2004 towards the high holiday season, where he invited me to go to a festival in northern Israel. He told me that I could teach Guf HaMikudash, I could teach this holy body work, which was essentially Tai Chi and other things that I had studied. And I watched him teach in front of many people, and I watched him work the crowd into a frenzy. I also watched him embarrass his then wife in the most egregious way, poured water over her head in front of everyone because she had the audacity to make a joke that he wasn't a part of, or that made him look slightly, out of light. And I checked in with many friends who were with me who came to visit Northern Israel and they all got the same sense of him, that there was something off about him. All of this wasn't enough to deter me from being a part of this group. For whatever reasons, my own stuff, I should have left right away, but I didn't. My own selfishness, my own desire maybe to get a degree, whatever it was. But I stayed, and it was a huge mistake, because from that moment on, I watched him up close. I watched him lie to his students about who he was, about what his practices were. I had many, many friends who were behind the scenes working with him in Beit Hadash, who would see that he wasn't a meditator, he wasn't a davener, he wasn't a prayer. He had many, many habits that were not just dysfunctional and not just unhealthy, but he was also just not, he was a hypocrite. He acted as if he was one thing and he wasn't. And that was true in terms of, I mean, the most egregious thing was that he claimed to be this erotic lover, intimate, and had a monogamous relationship. And it became very, very clear that he was seducing and sleeping with many, many women. Over the course of those 2 years, I knew about many of them behind the scenes. And eventually he seduced 3 of my dearest friends who became involved with him intimately and romantically, most of them simultaneously, most of them being sworn to secrecy, most of them living with the fear of what would happen if they told their secret to others. All of this was against the backdrop of him being a teacher of quote-unquote relationships and the mystery of love. And so I saw all of this happening, and it came to a head in 2006 when Beit Hadash, this center that I alluded to earlier, exploded in Israel. And many of my friends were involved in that as well, behind the scenes. But my own experience of him was that he was a triangulator. He made triangles of intrigue where if you told one thing to one person, another person, it was very dangerous because you were swept up in the sense that he was somehow, that there was a great secret that you had to keep and that you were going to be in trouble. And all kinds of, house of mirror stuff. He was someone who plagiarized my materials, both the ideas that I gave to him in one moment would then wind up being out in the public sphere in two minutes later and without any attribution. That was the way it was also in his books. And I know from firsthand experience that he plagiarized work from my dear friend Ohad Ezrahi and from others. And so my testimonial here is to say to anyone that's watching this, anyone that's listening to this, Marc Gafni is going to say that David Ingber and others are jealous, that we have an issue, that we're coming after him, that we can't, he was too radical for the Jewish community. There are hundreds of people, men, women, gay, straight, religious, not religious, all of whom had personal experience that I and anyone else we didn't have to do anything to get them to be able to come forth just to make it safe for them, because for years they felt that it wasn't safe. And the great irony of what's been happening in the last couple of months is that, of course, Gafni wants to spin this as some kind of vendetta or some kind of internet smear campaign. And the reality is that he's the internet smear campaign master. He's the one that has spoken against all manner of people to discredit them from seeing the truth. This is a trail that has been plaguing him for 4 decades, 3.5, 4 decades. There have been allegations. We know the facts. We have eyewitness testimony, whether it's the victims who have come forward to say that he abused them, that he was a sexual predator when they were minors, or whether it's all manner of women who were quote unquote consenting while their spiritual teacher was lying to them. And it happened in every place that Marc went, and it's continued to happen from 2006 on, even from the moment that he left Beit Hadash and he said that he was sick and he needed help. He's continued to sleep with women. He's continued to lie about his practices. He's continued to present himself as if he's someone other than who he is. And that's really very dangerous. And so my testimonial is to say that I have experienced his pathologies, and what I perceive to be his pathologies. And I've also witnessed it from others and know it firsthand, the kind of darkness that Marc Gafni carries. And so this is a warning to all of those who are involved with Marc Gafni. He is not who he presents himself to be. He is someone that must be that you have to be really careful with, and someone that should not be teaching spiritual wisdom, should not be holding a position of authority, a spiritual authority of any kind. He's not qualified, and if this video and any video like this saves even one person from the heartache and from the trauma and from the scars that many of my friends, including myself to some degree, experienced in our association with Marc Gafni, it would be well worth the time and energy that we put into this.